go all Brandon Aiyuk on this episode, and I'm not going to. I'm instead going to look at this situation completely backward. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates, the other two teams in town that I cover, and I hope you'll give those a chance as well. There's money to be spent, and that money has not been spent, and at least as I'm seeing it right now, without being some sort of expert capologist, there's not really a need to spend it on places that don't involve outside acquisitions. And let me get specific here so you know what I'm talking about. According to the website Over the Cap, which studies all NFL teams and the league's overall various cap scenarios, the Steelers have cap space of exactly $15,876,765. So we'll just call it 16. They've got $16 million in cap space. They've got their draft class wrapped up for the most part. They appear to be, if you look at their roster of 90 plus that they'll be bringing into Latrobe, set as far as having established their general depth charts. And by that I mean not only that they picked up Patrick Queen at inside linebacker, but also that they brought in the other players who will fill out that chart. So you don't even have some sort of decimal points that you need to be going over. The roster that you see in front of you is in all likelihood the roster or really, really, really close to it that they'll be bringing to St. Vincent. You want to talk about Cam Hayward? We can do that, but even that won't change this picture. Cam is due $16 million in actual cash for the coming season, but he's currently constituting a $22 million cap hit. If anything, that figure will only go down because these are smart people. And Omar Khan specifically is a smart person. So if you'll allow me to extrapolate that even just a bit more, I would think that Omar could figure out a way to get about $4 million in cap hit savings. That's not asking Cam to play for less or anything like that, just talking about the way the contract, the extension would be structured, that's all. So now what are we up to? $20 million in cap space? All right. Throw in potential restructures for, I don't know, TJ Watt, any number of guys. Again, I'm not going to play as if I've got this stuff all nailed down myself. I don't. But you could conceivably, probably without pushing too many chips all over the table, come up with another $4 or $5 million in cap space. Now you're sitting on $25 million in cap space, and you really can't spend it on anyone internally if you wanted to. I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could go talk to Russell Wilson and say, wow, we think you had a great OTAs, Russ. We're going to pay you $20 million. It's not going to happen. I suppose if you're really impressed with Justin Fields and you were worried about the quarterback position for coming years, you could say, Justin, we're going to sit down and sign you to a massive signing bonus right now, as well as a long-term contract. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. None of this is going to happen. But you know what might? They could be sitting on this cash. And I'm going to reiterate to you at least my own stance that this season really should mean something to the Steelers, and not just because they haven't won a playoff game in forever. They really ought to start contending for something again. And they really, really ought to start doing that while they still have TJ and Cam and Minkah Fitzpatrick and what looks like could be a really dynamic defense. And also, by the way, since you now structured your offense around the running game, while you've got Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren in their primes, while you've got this offensive line that's built suddenly on all these high draft picks, while you've got a Pat Freiermuth, I might be the one who's out of whack here, but I don't look at this roster and think to myself, oh yeah, this is built for the long haul. No. As I see it, you need to be winning a Super Bowl while you have the best defensive player on the planet at his absolute peak. And for that matter, while you've got the game's premier safety at his absolute peak. So to try to picture a scenario in which Omar goes into the season with tons of cap space, and I mean, whether it's 16 or 20 or whatever the number actually ends up being, I can promise you it'll be something that's way, way, way out of character for this franchise. Kevin Colbert was, you'll remember this, pouring over every penny throughout the season trying to make sure that he stayed under the cap. I don't see how that happens. But you know what? I feel like this is important to add as well. I don't want this to sound like, go get Aiyuk, go get whoever, so that you spend up to the cap. Because in all likelihood, but especially in a case like Aiyuk, with all the squawking that's occurred between him and the 49ers, all of that's related to a long-term contract, to long-term money that far exceeds this money that we're talking about here, which is a single-year cap space that would probably not even cover his salary. There'd have to be some moves. So you can't look at this and just say, well, 1 year of Aiyuk got to do it. Well, it won't for him. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Chris, who says, DK, why do I feel like our wide receiver room is in better shape than most think? Roman Wilson has the potential to be Deontay Johnson. A lot of the same skill sets, needs to learn the routes and perfect them. But he's faster than both Antonio Brown and Deontay. He's the same weight, but he's an inch taller. He has the same quickness and movement, seemingly a drive to be great. No one saw Deontay or AB performing as they did except the team. Chris, I'm not going anywhere near comparing any young wide receiver to AB. AB's the best I've ever seen at the position. And for that matter, I'm not going to put him into a Deontay comparison yet either. Deontay, for all his warts, established NFL wide receiver. You know, we don't know if Wilson's going to break the huddle with the first team by the time everybody gets to Atlanta. But yeah, I can see where you would feel more confident about the wide receiver room if you believe that Wilson can be everything that you described and possibly even more. Wilson did impress. As I've shared with you previously, the coaches and his teammates at OTAs and on into minicamp, at least as much as you could in that environment. Wilson's got college film that's plenty enticing, not just in terms of how he catches the ball, but in terms of a lot of the other things that he does that, candidly, Deontay didn't do. He's tough. He's physical. Looks like an Arthur Smith type of wide receiver. Great. Wonderful. Let's see it. If he does rise up, whether that's gradual or whether that's just right away in Latrobe, that's in every way, shape, and form an optimal outcome here. And you know what? Since I brought this up in the opening segment and all the Brandon Aiyuk scenarios and everything else that are still out there, and still possible, by the way, I wouldn't doubt for a second that Omar Khan's waiting to see this very thing himself. Where is it written that the 49ers are calling any of the shots here? It could be that the Steelers are hanging on. They just want to see what they have. Let's get a good look at it. Not when they're wearing shorts, when they're actually out there doing some football stuff. And if they go out there and they take the field with Wilson and George Pickens and Calvin Austin and say, hey, between that and the fact that we're really going to be using Pat Freiermuth like a second wide receiver himself, there's really not that much more we need, and we're not feeling that urge anymore to go and invest $1 bazillion in Aiyuk or someone else at that level. And from there, they can do other stuff with that cap space, including moving some of it in ways that they can protect themselves at the most important position for years to come. I don't know. My main thrust today has been that I just think it'll be really, really weird if the general manager of this football team at this time enters the season with all that room. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everyone listening to Daily Shot of Steelers, and we're going to do another one of these tomorrow.